Opta's latest title forecast is tightening the Premier League race, with the supercomputers still backing Arsenal, but by a shrinking margin. Following Manchester City's 1-0 win over Burnley, which moved them level on points and goal difference with Arsenal, the model has recalibrated its end-of-season predictions, or rather projections. Arsenal remain favourites at approximately 66% to win the league, according to Opta simulations. Manchester City, despite moving to the summit on the live table, are rated around 34%. The key detail is how narrow the separation has become, with both sides locked on points and goal difference. Only goals scored currently separate them. And Opta's model reflects how small margins are now defining the race. Earlier in the season, Arsenal's probability had surged over 90% at certain points. That figure has steadily declined as City closed the gap in recent weeks, especially after direct results between the two sides shifted momentum. The supercomputer's projection is based on thousands of simulated season outcomes, factoring in form, fixtures, scoring trends, and defensive records. In most scenarios, Arsenal still finish ahead, but the frequency of City title outcomes has increased significantly in recent rounds of modelling. Both teams now enter a decisive stretch, with Arsenal hosting Newcastle and Manchester City turning attention to their FA Cup commitments before returning to league action. While the live table shows City on top, Opta's numbers continue to suggest this title race is far from settled and increasingly dependent on fine margins rather than clear superiority. There's a particular kind of football conversation that only exists when a title race drags deep into the season. It stops being about tactics and becomes about temperament, about who you trust and who you don't, about who you were laughing with in February and who is now sending voice notes in April that sound a little too satisfied. Take my friend Lloyd from Botswana, for instance. Manchester United fan, sharp-tongued, careful to insist he's not rooting for City in any emotional sense, but football really needs emotional confessionals to reveal alignment. Since our meetup in Namibia back in February, he's been consistent in a different way, present, observant, and increasingly confident in his conclusions. He's not loud in his celebratory sense, more like someone who has already written the ending and is now watching the script catch up. His WhatsApp messages have developed a rhythm, short, certain, the kind that begins with "I told you, bro," and ends with nothing because really there's nothing else he needs to say from his perspective. He warned me, but the season isn't over. And then there's Kumbi from Zimbabwe. Different energy entirely. When we met in Namibia, he noticed the way my belief in Arsenal was not performative. It wasn't anxious. It was steady. He could see that there were years I had invested in this club and nothing was going to shake it. Now, at some point in our conversation, he actually asked me, "What's your favorite poison? So when you guys get to win the league this season, I get to send it to you all the way from Zimbabwe." Ooh. I mean, that was exciting to hear. I'm just wondering now, he will probably have questions for me and I don't have answers for him yet. The season is still on, but I will take him on that offer. And even though I told him at the time that I no longer consumed alcohol, I could still, just for the sake of Arsenal lifting the trophy, that can be my own trophy. Hey, this is what Arsenal do to people, whether they support them or not. They turn friendships into running commentaries. They turn optimism into a position that must constantly defend itself. And they turn outsiders into witnesses who feel entitled to verdicts long before the story is finished. And then there's the brother chorus, the familiar online figure who always seems to arrive a few weeks early. The so-called hate watcher. He doesn't need Arsenal to collapse. Who doesn't need Arsenal to collapse only to hesitate at the exact wrong moments? In their version of events, everything has already been decided. The narrative is just catching up slowly. But football is rarely that obedient. Arsenal are still here, still structured, still capable of controlling games in ways that look like inevitability for long stretches. And that part does not disappear because of sarcasm or timing. Yet the other part, the part that decides seasons, has become harder to ignore. The small pauses where certainty should be. The moments where control does not become closure. The games where dominance feels like preparation rather than conclusion. And so the conversations continue. Between continents, between predictions and counter-predictions, between people who are watching the same matches but no longer interpreting them the same way. Lloyd keeps typing and I keep thinking, what's Kumbi up to now? And somewhere in the middle, belief starts to feel less like a stance and more like a test that hasn't finished marking itself. Because if this doesn't end the way it was once imagined, it won't just change the table. It will change the meaning of all those conversations that started with confidence, passed through patience, and are now arriving slowly, inevitably, at a question nobody's fully willing to ask out loud yet. When belief survives this long without reward, does it still count as conviction, or has it become denial? Delulu. Arsenal women have secured one of their most reliable attacking options for the long term, with Stina Blackstenius signing a new contract at the club, a move that underlines her growing importance in North London. The Swedish international has built a reputation as a forward for the big moments, not always the loudest presence over a full 90 minutes, but increasingly decisive when it matters most. The profile has fit neatly into Arsenal's evolving attack, where movement, timing, and direct running into space are central to the system. Blackstenius brings a specific edge, acceleration behind defensive lines, intelligence of the ball movement, and a calmness in high-pressure finishing situations. It is that blend that has made her particularly valuable in European nights and tight WSL contests, where space is limited and chances are few. Her renewal signals trust from the club in that exact skill set. Rather than rotating away from her profile, Arsenal are doubling down on it, keeping a forward who stretches defenses and creates structure for those around her. Since arriving, she's developed from a rotational option into a consistent tactical piece in Arsenal's frontline. Her role is less about constant volume and more about targeted impact, breaking compact teams open and converting decisive chances. The contract extension also reflects a broader theme at Arsenal women: stability in key positions. With experienced leaders like Kim Little guiding midfield and attacking pieces like Blackstenius retained, the club prioritizing continuity as they push to convert competitiveness into trophies is evident. In simple terms, Arsenal are not just keeping the striker, they're keeping a specific match winner profile, one that fits the margins of modern elite women's football, where games are often decided by a single run, a single touch, a single moment. It started without ceremony. March 1972, Newcastle. A cold afternoon that remembers more than it showed. A young defender, Brendan Batson, steps onto the pitch for Arsenal and becomes the club's first black player. No spotlight paused on it. No sense of milestone on the moment. Just a substitution, a job to do, and a game to finish. That is often how history behaves when it is still forming. Batson did not arrive at Arsenal as a symbol. He arrived as a teenager trying to break into a side already full of champions from the previous season. Even he did not fully register the weight of what it meant at the time. Yet, significance has a way of catching up. In hindsight, his debut marks a shift point. English football in the early 70s was still learning how to absorb change it hadn't planned for. Black players were rare in top squads, and when they appeared, they often carried expectations far heavier than their boots. Batson's presence did something subtle but lasting. It challenged the idea that belonging in elite football had a fixed shape. What followed at Arsenal and beyond was not instant transformation, but accumulation. Paul Davies, Michael Thomas, Ian Wright, Patrick Vieira. Each arrival widened the frame a little more. Each success made the next one harder to deny. Batson sits at the start of that chain. Though he never framed himself that way, he was not trying to open doors. He was trying to keep his place in the room. And so Arsenal's story here is not just about a first. It's about how institutions change without noticing they're changing. One appearance at a time, one player at a time, until what once felt unusual becomes normal, and what was once invincible becomes impossible to ignore. Batson's debut is not a headline moment the way modern football prefers, but its impact is heavier precisely because it did not ask to be remembered. It simply happened. and football has been unfolding in its shadow ever since. Arsenal tapped filmmaker Spike Lee for a new short film titled Huaya, blending football culture, fandom, and finance in a stylized pop-set narrative. The project, created in partnership with fintech sponsor Airwallex, sees the Brooklyn director extend his long-standing affection for the North London club into a cinematic piece featuring club legends, current players, and well-known supporters, with Thierry Henry among those making a standout appearance. Shot in a classic British pub environment, the film explores the culture of support behind football while subtly touching on the evolving business side of the game and everyday financial awareness. It marks another cultural crossover moment for Arsenal as football storytelling continues to blur the line between sport, lifestyle, and commerce.
Up Gunners!